Hello, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. So this is reporting on the situation in Ukraine, whereas the United States has claimed that they believe Russia may well stage a false flag incident in Ukraine, which would be either pretending to kill people or actually killing people, ethnic Russians and or Russian citizens in Ukraine, probably in Luhansk or the Donbass area, and then saying that the Ukrainian military has done this. This is a crime against humanity, therefore it's causa interventionis, and Russia would be morally and perhaps illegally justified in invading to save the much put upon Russian ethnic minority there. So the United States just took a bold step to do this. It's obviously revealing some secret intelligence there, if indeed it's true. Many people say that this is bogus. This is sort of to preempt Russia doing it, make it less likely that Russia will do it, or indeed if Russia does stage a false flag incident, it won't be very credible because the Americans and the British say, "We told you so. Been telling this for weeks. This is what they're going to do." Hello, Mr. English. And of course, Russia has done this before, and Russia's already preparing the public mind. It was the other day Putin said that the second time that genocide is going on in Ukraine, as in supposedly committed by the Ukrainian military and its auxiliaries. The Russian government's been reminding its people that Ukraine could commit a chemical attack against ethnic Russians. But I'm not aware that Ukraine has got any chemical weapons. Russia certainly does. I can think of only one country in the last 30 years that's launched a chemical attack anywhere in the world, and that is the Russian armed forces. But before the Russian military arrived in Syria, there had never been a chemical attack throughout the whole of Syrian history. Since the Russian military was stationed there have been dozens of chemical attacks, killing at least several thousand civilians, always in areas held by the insurgents. And then Russia deny, nothing to do with us. But they see this as the great equalizer. It's got war-winning potential. The Western pushback, a few airstrikes, have not been particularly heavy, so they consider it worth it. I'm not Russophobic in the least. Obviously, wonderful Russian people. There's some people who are not Russian are absolute rats. There are admirable things about Russian culture. Even the Soviet Union, and I say this as a fervent anti-communist, even it had a few laudable achievements in terms of education or gender equality. But yeah, it's an awful pity that Russia's ruled by this tyrant now, and sadly, a lot of people do believe him. They're gulled. About 28% of Russians want war against Ukraine. Do you think the UK will impose effective sanctions? Maybe a bit more effective. The West's been far too feeble over the last 8 years. Yes, it's dented the Russian economy, but nowhere near enough to make them step back. I don't see them withdrawing from Crimea ever. Luhansk and Donbass, with severe sanctions, they might do. But Crimea, I'm afraid, is gone. So considering that the state has almost total control of the media, is pumping out war propaganda all the time, anti-Ukrainian bile, it's actually astonishing there's not more fighting spirit in Russia. If they really had a level playing field, if they really had a free media, what would it be like then? Of course, this is a diversionary tactic. He's deflected attention from the kleptocracy, from his failings on coronavirus, on inflation, from income compression and so on, although he's actually exacerbated these problems because the Russian stock market and the ruble have been hit and so on. They're slightly rallied in the past week. Anyway, but the United States took this bold step, but the trouble is that may well expose whoever their mole is, and the Russians may be able to find that person and kill whoever he or she is, or maybe it's communications intercepts. And on February the 15th, the Russian State Duma, the lower house of their parliament, voted to recommend that President Putin recognize the Luhansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic. These breakaway renegade regions of Ukraine. Now Putin is mulling it over, but to do so, that would completely destroy the Minsk agreement. You might say the Minsk agreement is already more honoured in the breach than the observant. Obviously, Russia's been breaking it flagrantly for years. Ukraine's been breaking it too, but you might say, well, they can hold themselves absolved from it because Russia's been breaking it first and on a much larger scale. But then Putin would lose that leverage. Expropriating the assets. Well, I don't think we should send home the pupils from school, although that might be somewhat effective. It also damage the UK economy. We don't want to punish the guilty as well as the innocent, but then you might say, well, this is war and innocents suffer. Not saying to kill Russian civilians, no, but just to confiscate their assets. About $1.1 trillion of Russian assets in Western countries could all be confiscated. But then obviously Western countries have got assets in Russia, much less than that. But what if someone's a dual citizen, a citizen, say, Cyprus and Russia? Would you confiscate their assets in the European Union or not? I would say you don't. Anyway, and targeting Putin with sanctions personally would be a very good idea. So Russia recognising these breakaways would be a flagrant breach of international law. Of course, Russia's got previous on this, recognising Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which are lawfully part and parcel of Georgia, and so on. And yet Russia jealously guards its own territorial integrity, not even allowing anyone to advocate for an entirely peaceful and democratic movement to independence for Tatarstan, for Chechnya, Yakutia, or anywhere else like that. Anyway, the Russian TV has shown what are supposedly mass graves in Ukraine of Russian civilians. We don't know where these graves are. They might not be in Ukraine. We don't know when that was filmed. It could have been on that day. It could have been years before. So it could have been filmed anywhere in the world. We don't know who's buried there. They could be Russian. They could be Ukrainian. They could be any nationality. We don't know. Are they soldiers? Are they civilians? We don't know how they were killed. What, did they die of natural causes? Were they willfully killed? And we don't know who killed them. So this is actually no proof at all, not even remotely hinting at any war crimes committed by the Ukrainian military or Ukrainian militias. And then relentlessly branding Ukrainians as fascist, when of course it's the Putin regime which behaves in a fascistic manner. Because of the Second World War, a lot of Russians find it hard to comprehend that their government could be fascistic at all. And the ultra-nationalist parties in Ukraine garner about 2% of the vote. The so-called liberal Democrats in Russia get much more of the vote than that, and they really are fascistic. Putin's got all sorts of fascistic tendencies, but maybe we should say totalitarian. This cult of the personality. He served as president and prime minister at the same time. Hitler did that. He is xenophobic, he's homophobic, he's into family values, he's always kowtowing to the major religious denomination, he's muzzled the press, he has murdered hundreds of journalists, he's had his armed forces commit crimes against humanity with absolute impunity, he starts wars of aggression, and on and on. This is sort of a totalitarian checklist. Is the big lie theory. If you lie enough, and a lot of people will believe it, he's murdered peaceful dissidents abroad. And even the Russian parliament passed a law in 2006, shortly before the murder of Anna Politkovskaya. And, oh my God, that other guy, the one who wrote Blowing Up Russia, it'll come to me. Saying that if anyone's an extremist anywhere in the world, they can be killed by the Russian security forces. No trial, no charge. There doesn't have to be a hint of violence. If they're an extremist for holding a belief, you can be murdered anywhere in the world by the Russian intelligence services. That's lawful under Russian law. Staggering. Anyway, there was an uptick in firing across the ceasefire line in eastern Ukraine between the pro-Russian insurgents and the Ukrainian military. So is this providing a pretext for war? Some people thought war was going to start on Wednesday. It's now Friday. But as I say, I never thought there would be a full-scale war trying to take the whole of Ukraine, trying to take quite a lot of it. A lot of Russian military forces in Belarus. There's the joint military training exercise in Belarus right now. That's due to come at the end of the 20th of February. Russia says that will withdraw those forces after that date. There are always some Russian soldiers in Belarus, but a lot more for this military exercise. But it's trying to intimidate Ukraine. Putin always likes to rule by fear. So the Ukrainians are actually quite well armed with defensive weapons, surface-to-air missiles, anti-tank missiles, drones, much better armed than they were 8 years ago, so more of a tough nut to crack. Russia could conquer the whole of Ukraine, but there'll be serious casualties. They'd lose a lot of their tanks, a lot of their planes. And a Ukrainian friend said a lot of Ukrainians are tooled up and saying, bring it on. And so they're quite pumped. But how long can you sustain that? So maybe Putin's strategy is not going to be to even invade at all, but just to have the troops massed on the border for months to intimidate Ukraine. On the other hand, that's going to the war fever in Russia is going to diminish. It's fairly low. People get bored of it. Can we have a peaceful solution? Or what? He's hoping that cracks will appear in the Western alliance. Some NATO countries say, well, let's give him what he wants. Let's calm down. There's already happening. Well, like Tucker Carlson, that racist opinion former of the United States, already saying, well, we should let him have what he wants and so on. So it's all very worrisome, and it's such an awful pity. It's completely avoidable. There doesn't need to be a war there at all. Putin should stop backing terrorism, should stop lying, should stop his illegal and unprovoked invasions of other countries, and actually sort out Russia's many, many serious problems about people living in relative poverty, about overdependence on hydrocarbons and so on, poorly funded public services. Instead of behaving with small man syndrome and spending huge amounts on boys' toys, all these weapons, ruining his people, stealing the wealth of his people while his people live in relative poverty. So he's going to meet his fellow tyrant Lukashenko quite soon in Belarus it'll be a real love fest between those two. Anyway, I'm very glad I'm not in Ukraine. I do feel very sorry for Ukrainians, and I understand what the Russian claim is to Crimea as an arguable case, or even Luhansk and Donbass. But you go to the UN, and Luhansk and Donbass had a good situation. They already had autonomy. They already could use the Russian language a lot. There was absolutely no need to do this. It's entirely Putin's fault. This war of aggression, blood in his hands, at least 13,000 people killed, absolutely needlessly. That's enough from me. Please subscribe to the channel. Toodaloo.